So we have two new complaints to consider. And then also we have the new complaints we discussed at last work session. So why don't we go ahead and email everyone the two complaints that was take care of one thing that we want. Talk about what we learned, and also if we didn't concerned about
and what I have found is that we can do something called reviewing function if there is new information to introduce. That there is new information to introduce. We one of our failed motions led us to decision or not decision, but the place of action. So that is one that Dr. Asher has. And then there's one that I jumped into Dr. the consultation with legal counsel.
Steve should be right down.
Okay. So here, I will speak like this so as not to increase the echo. I understand from consultation with 3 different attorneys is that work policy. One moment, please. Let's see if we can get this next.
Who's supposed to help her?
I think it's set that way, but she. I think it's separate, but she should.
Check again. See if this works. Still do. I'll go ahead and resume. So, the question as to whether or not we need to follow policy PL regarding complaints or ACC regarding complaints of racial harassment. The feedback we got was that the subject governs the general. And to that, I think that fixed it. And to that end, any complaint, that KL policy is the general policy attending to all complaints generally. When there is a complaint specifically about racial harassment, then we follow the procedures outlined in board policy ACC, and that board policy stipulates that all complaints of racial harassment shall be investigated. There is not an operational definition of investigation, so the recommendation from legal counsel is to create an AR after a review of board policy ACC, create an AR that defines lost my train of thought, that we need to create an administrative rule that defines when we would conduct an investigation with district staff, when we would conduct an investigation using an external third-party investigator. In the absence of that clarity, the recommendation was to conduct an investigation that has the highest level of credibility and use a third-party investigator to investigate complaints of racial harassment involving members of the board at this time.
So to follow up on that, because of the way that the complaint is currently written, before we can even consider action, it has to be investigated before it even comes before us.
Which of the three complaints?
The two complaints that are filed under the category of racial harassment.
That's correct, there would just be an investigation, and then we would present that information to the board.
So we don't need to take action on instigating or initiating the investigation, it's just what needs.
Correct,
Does anybody have?
according to the legal opinions that we received. And that would be my recommendation.
Does anybody have any questions about this, or are we all on the same page and we can move on to the next one? Okay, so then, go ahead, Judy.
I just had a related question, because I took notes on the questions, and that was clear, I really understand, but something that came up also was that someone said this really isn't about racial harassment, even though it was marked on the form. And so I think I had the question is if it's marked on the form, do we just say that's what it is? Because a board, I think there was a discussion about whether it really was or not.
I think the root cause of that issue will be addressed when revisiting the policy itself. We would not want to infer without an investigation that there wasn't racial harassment, or take a look at a policy and infer when someone did not indicate racial harassment that there actually was. So we need to go with what's right now, what the complainant writes on the complaint form itself.
Makes sense.
Alicia.
So appreciate the info, and I think I said this at the last week's meeting, that we need to work on this policy, so I don't know, maybe at the end of the meeting, somebody can make that suggestion and see if they can get 3 handouts. I just wanted to call it out, the intent is good, but the way it's played out, I think, is very costly. Just wanna make sure we get the best policy possible.
I think that it's been repeatedly stated by multiple board members, so I don't even think we have to bring it up. I think the intention in my conversation with Dr. Guy is that we would be initiating work on that policy to come forward at the earliest possible time. It's something that needs to take care of certainly. Are there any other questions about the two complaints that indicated racial harassment? Okay, so then we can move on to the third complaint. Judy?
I'm sorry. I thought I had other questions that we raised about the complaints to ask an attorney, that I thought were raised. Specifically, we talked about our policy that was raised about how the board behaves on social media and all that. We all know that policy that was named in one of the complaints. But then we get a claim that people's civil rights and free speech are infringed. And I was looking for some clarification about that. When does it cross that line for free speech? That was one of the questions that I think was asked. And then the other one was incidents on a closed Facebook account. If it's closed. I mean, those are all questions that related to.
She's moving to that one now.
Oh, okay, I thought you said you were moving on, okay, great.
No, I'm moving on to the third complaint that
Yes.
wasn't categorically racial harassment. So, the information that we have regarding that one, and Andy, I don't know if you want to speak to those, but the information that we have received, there was a question, regarding whether the complainant wanted or was open to a hearing. And we've received an email in the meantime. They tuned in, heard our conversation, and indicated that they are requesting a hearing. So that's where we can consider renewing the motion with that new information. And in the process of having a hearing, we could find out more information, but my understanding is that looking at that policy, it does not distinguish between closed or open. It just says on these platforms, on social media. And my understanding of how you talk is that we are supposed to look at those and not infer and add to them. But that might be another place in policy that needs to be changed.
Yeah, I believe first, we may wanna send that up to OSBA, to have a look, even though it's been, reviewed in recent years. I think technology moves at a faster clip and law surrounding technology than maybe our board policies. It, at this point in time, just states, on social media, not in a closed group within a social media platform. And free speech, yes, but a member of the board has agreed, once elected, to abide by the board policies, and that supersedes just general, again, specificity goes generality. And if there's a board policy that we're supposed to follow that requires board members to act in a particular way in their official capacity, whether it's an open social media page or a page that's private, much like would be a cocktail party or a backyard barbecue with certain people invited, it's still public because there are multiple people there. And so if we're gonna have a policy that says that board members can act a certain way on social media, then that applies to all situations on social media.
And that was the attorney's.
That's what I've understood, yes.
I mean, that's it.
Did you consult a different attorney?
I mean, not specifically now, but in the past when I touched. Yeah.
So the other information that we did not have prior, because with this new information, I did reach out to the complainant to ask again if they would be amenable to an extension. And they, because otherwise we would have to have this completed by the first meeting in June. And they are amenable to an extension to our second meeting in June. So this does give us time to, if we are to make that, redo that motion and pass it to have a hearing, we could schedule it for the 21st. It gives us plenty of time to prepare for it as well, so that we're not rushing into it. So those are the two pieces of information we did not have last time. So, are there any questions about that complaint, Alicia?
Not the complaint so much as the policy. Does our policy require us to have a hearing?
Our policy does not require us to have a hearing. Our policy gives us that as an option.
And given the person that this complaint is against is out on administrative leave and won't be back, is my understanding, I don't think it would be a good thing, to hold a hearing when the person being turned against, accused, whatever, isn't and can't be present. So just wanted us as a board to think about that. That means that more than likely, we're gonna hand this brand new board this, if you choose to have a hearing. I also think that they're just a work session. That it's interesting that we as a board needed to get clarity on this from attorneys, which means we as a board weren't clear about this. I know that when another board member filed a complaint against two board members for some comments on social media about a staff person, we got, Gordon actually was the person that gave us an earful on First Amendment rights. So I think it's been very confusing. And what I would suggest and what I'm interested in is this new board getting a new start. And to me, that would be training and clarity on what this means, and also clarity from board members what will happen if this continues or this happens again. I've got some great examples of what we would be talking about. And I think we shouldn't be talking, I just wanna say, I don't think we should be talking without anybody on Facebook as an elected official. Our staff, it's been more than one board member has done that. I think I think it's wrong. I don't think it moves us forward. That being said, we all know that we had group agreements, and I sat in a room where we had board members say, I won't follow that policy. So we have a history as a board of saying, I won't follow that policy, I won't follow that policy. We have a chance to fix that. We have a chance to make a fresh start. And so that's what I would want for you all, is not to be handed something like this and send you down the same path, but that you can get clarity and people understand what the behavior is and what the consequence would be. That's just my.
I just wanna make sure that we don't, cross any lines discussing what we've talked about in executive session.
Because we didn't talk about any of those things.
Well, the complaint that you referenced, we talked about in executive session.
We did, it was also talked about in the newspapers, so I feel like it's a little bit out there.
Okay, that's fair. I'm just putting it out there because it's tricky territory, because we want to talk about practice that's been in place, and we also can't. I mean, those executive sessions aren't even available to Michelle, so where it can't be, so it becomes a little tricky.
Well,
I appreciate, and I don't
I
want to
just
have
want to
this
be clear, I can talk about it, you guys can just censure me for doing it. So,
yes,
think
no
about
one's,
that.
no one's
And I don't want,
physically gag you, Alicia.
thanks, Maya, appreciate it. I should really want to, those are the clarities that you get a chance to with your new board. You know, if you do talk about executive session, this is what we as a board have determined will happen. You stop such an opportunity.
It's very exciting. I do fully support not passing this off onto the next board. So, whatever we can do to resolve this in a way that, reflects our current board's position on this, I think is very important. I also think that, I know I said this last time, but I'm gonna say it again, that when there's precedents, the importance of precedent setting cases is sometimes to halt bad practice. And what you've described to me feels like behavior that I would not support continuing, with the understanding that it is not best practice. So, I don't wanna continue down the pathway because we all sat and listened to, what was his name, the OSBA conference? That we sat all day long. We started the whole thing off with, because we've always done it this way, should not be a reason to do it. Spencer? Not Spencer, the guy that we spent 8 hours for.
What was the guy?
Join. Yep. One who was our keynote speaker that kicked things off. Judy, and then I also just want to remind us that we will have time to talk about this in our meeting.
I agree with you. Continuing with the same bad behavior because we've always done it that way is no excuse. But I do think all this is predicated on a board coming together, making group agreements, understanding our policies and what the expectations are together. And I don't think we're even there with this group of people because we've never done that. So that's a hard one because I'm still left with the impression of what individuals have said, right or wrong, it's what happened. And it's hard to correct that without then stepping back and as a group having some group norms, which I think we desperately need, and then to stick to that.
Agreed. But there's a difference between group norms and policy, and we just discussed how with the racial harassment policy, we would follow it, and I'm not sure that it behooves anybody in this entire district for us to decide which of the policies we should or shouldn't follow. Like, policies are very different from norms and working agreements.
But if a board member, just to respond to that, came on the board and really didn't know they were accepting all the policies of behavior and thought because that was their only experience, that would be new information for some people on the board, I think.
And luckily in this situation, the board member in question has repeatedly stated, made the comparison of policy being the equivalent of a law for the board member, so I'm pretty darn sure they understand.
Well, except for, they may understand that, but the ink sees it. Yeah, it just, let's figure out how we don't pass it on to the board and how we stop the behavior. And how we make sure that the people involved have a chance to speak. Those are where I'm looking.
Thank you. Do you have something to say? You look like you have your hand on the mic.
My question is, if someone chooses not to participate, I don't think that it should prevent us from addressing these issues.
I agree.
And you're saying that group agreements and group norms are not understood, but I think they are understood. And as far as social media is concerned, I question, if you're saying everyone on social media has been breaking policy, and I don't believe that that's true.
And I didn't say that.
Okay, so, I don't know, I hear a lot of plurals, and I just, I'm just having a hard time following because I wasn't present in a lot of those meetings last year. And I'm just going on what I've heard for the last year. And I still have clarity on what anyone here thinks.
Do we have any more comments or questions about this particular complaint? Sorry. Judy?
Just to follow up, if we, to what was raised, I don't know how long the administrative leave lasts, when the end is, but it does seem like it wouldn't be right. And I don't know if someone's choosing to not attend, that could be real medical, I don't know the details. So I feel like we should get the ending date, and is it okay to do a hearing with someone on leave?
Go ahead.
I don't understand how you can put yourself on administrative leave. This is puzzling to me.
You actually have a policy about
There-
that,
yeah,
so you can read the policy and you can understand how that works.
It's a policy that governs it, the 2 months and 4 months is the policy. 2 months and 4 months, I can get you the number.
Does that policy reference administrative leave?
It does not. Board policy BBD states when an incumbent ceases to discharge the duties of office for 4 consecutive months for any reason. This was last reviewed, adopted 7/2/73, and reviewed most recently 8/2/17, death or resignation of an incumbent. When an incumbent ceases to be a resident of the district, when an incumbent ceases to discharge the duties of office for 2 consecutive months unless prevented by sickness or unavoidable cause. So there is no reference to a leave of absence.
And I apologize for using the wrong words, but I was trying to,
So there is a
words that I've used it, sorry. Andy.
No, it's very true. There's a pretty significant difference between an employee on a leave of absence and the language in the policy that simply refers to prevented by sickness or unavoidable cause. And there's not an AR that stipulates what process anyone would go through to document or verify any type of sickness or an unavoidable cause. And so if the board is interested in an AR or more specificity, then maybe we may want to go look at this as well. Lot of room for interpretation there. And again, it was last adopted in August of 2017. Almost a lifetime ago. It seems
But
Not that far.
for a very brief window, we still have 2 board members who were part of that, so that's, so at least you're not going anywhere yet. But 2017 is 6 years ago, 6 years, 6 years feels like a good time to
Most of
add that to our list of policies that need to be reviewed. I think, if we, yeah, I think that we should talk about the other complaints and that we should bring this up in the meeting and discuss the concept of a renewed motion and then make a decision. Because we need to make a decision regardless. That was the final, resting place that we came to at our last meeting. Unless somebody, and I don't wanna cut anybody off, I also wanna be aware of the time, we have 2 complaints, one of which very much needs our attention because of the date it was submitted. So I'll move on to the complaint that is dated, March 7th, 2023. And, if you don't have them printed out, I did email them again to everybody so they get towards the top of your emails. I'll open up the floor if anybody has questions or thoughts or needs some consideration. Well, I'll point out, one thing, if nobody else wants to jump in. If you look on the last page, under how would you like the district to resolve your complaint, it says recall, and there's nothing that the board can do about that. That doesn't say the merit of the complaint is any less or more substantiable than that, but, I think this complaint that is not designated as racial harassment complaint, we go back to KLAR, and I don't see this as a complaint that is being filed on behalf of oneself or one's kid, student. I'm open to hearing otherwise. Judy?
So I was curious where it would have to be, because the person writes it's a complaint concerning racism and bullying, and that this person is a racist. So when does it become a complaint about racism? I didn't see a place you could check off.
Yeah, if you go above, there's a section right under the date that says, please check the appropriate box, and this specifically says bullying, harassment, intimidation, cyberbullying, or hazing, not based on a legally protected characteristic. If it was, then they have the opportunity to check. So,
It's not on this one. I looked for it, and it was in the content. It's on some of the
They
forms.
put it on the let's talk.
right, I don't know why you're supposed to put it in there.
That's what was emailed. We are looking at the same complaint.
This is what I printed out from my email. Yeah, turn the page. Right there.
Yeah.
Right under the date.
Printed one.
Yeah, right there.
Okay.
Yeah, if you compare it to, one of the other complaints that was also printed out on off of Let's Talk, that one specifically says legally protected characteristic, and then the app allows you to check which legally protected characteristics. And I'm looking at you, Jenna, that's right, correct? That the app lets you check.
I don't have it in front of me, but I believe it's based on whatever form we have.
Okay. If you look at the other one that we were just discussing, it distinguishes what they are. So this is a complaint about bullying, harassment, intimidation, cyberbullying, or hazing, but not designated specifically as additional harassment. Are there any other questions or comments about this one? Again, I don't want to cut anybody short, so I'll give you a minute to look at it.
I'm sorry, I really am trying to get, because I did see that on this form, and I do see these things listed. I assume that's what this person checked, because there's no boxes, but, there's no box for racial harassment. Would you have to write that in under other?
Well, so
And this, I really am trying to think, if I was filling out this form,
I'll read the other one. So somebody who filled out the same form put bullying, harassment, intimidation, cyberbullying, or hazing, based on a legally protected characteristic, which prompted a spot on the form that says discrimination continued, please check the actual or perceived characteristic upon which the alleged conduct was based, and they put race or ethnicity.
so if it didn't get checked, I mean, I don't see that on these forms. It only appears if,
Because they checked not based on a legally protected characteristic, it didn't prompt them asking what the legally protected characteristic is.
Because you have not filled out one of these forms.
obviously I haven't, because I don't
I
even see
appreciate
that
that.
as an option. So I don't even see the legally protected class on this one. So in order for us to see it, it would have to be checked, is what you're saying, it's set up that way. Okay.
If we want to take the time, we can go to the website and pull up the form
I can
and
do it.
start
Myself,
going through
for
it.
sure.
And then it will show you. I haven't done that myself, but I've seen the way they show up differently when one does it one way and another does it another way.
It might be confusing, I don't know what I'm saying. Okay.
So let's talk app.
Yep.
So is your suggestion that we treat this as a racial harassment complaint?
Well, all I'm saying is when I read the text, I don't necessarily want to, but that's what this person's referring to. What she's referring to in the complaint specifically concerning racism and bullying. She also, she says that about racism again, so I don't know. Is it a technicality she didn't know what to check, or am I reading too much in?
I don't have the answer to that. I mean, I have my opinion, but I don't have a technical answer to that. I'm not sure that we can read anything other than what's in front of us.
What's on the form, but not checked.
It's on the form, but the person made the decision not to check it for a reason. Jenna, that would be great. I was asking if you'd like her to share the form, so maybe we can look at that form.
Here's your complaint form. As you go through, you identify who you're filling it out for, you or yourself, the type of complaint, and so this is where you would identify what type of complaint. You click on the discrimination harassment, then it don't click it, you don't see it. If you're selecting that it's discrimination or harassment that you're reporting, it asks you to before it moves on to the details of it.
Thank you, Jenna. Are there other questions? Then I suggest we look at the complaint dated 4/6/2023. And I wanna point out that this person used a older version of the complaint form. So we could be in the same situation that you just described, but even more so because there's no section for designating this as something based on legally protected status. It just asks that this complaint involves a report of harassment, intimidation, bullying, cyberbullying, hazing, teen dating, violence, or discrimination. They checked yes, and then they checked other as to the reported offender, and the reported income is also other. So this outdated form was revised, and I'm not sure why they found this one. This one, on the other hand, explicitly states discrimination. States discrimination against white people and white men, which is not a legally protected status. When you look at our ACC, which we need to fix in many different fronts. That's not part of ACC.
Over my head. Hard to be consistent.
Is that,
Please,
I appreciate your opinion.
it's not.
It was really my question. See, I was gonna start with, I appreciate your opinion, do you have a legal opinion on that? I mean, I'm sorry,
A legal opinion on what?
the ACC, and I apologize, I didn't get that, so I didn't read through ACC and say, oh yeah, I see that's true. That's all I. Just, I didn't think to read with that question in mind.
I'm sorry, what's the question?
If ACC explicitly states that it has to be legally protected, I can read it to you, or I can hand it over to you, Alicia.
Yeah, we
It
just,
says racially harassing conduct means unwelcome physical, verbal, or nonverbal based conduct based on the person's actual or perceived race, color, national origin, or ethnicity. Or physical characteristics associated with a race, place of origin, protected class, ethnicity, or religious or cultural ancestry.
so what we would be saying as a board is that a person who is white can't be discriminated against under this policy. Like it just,
If that's what we were to make it as a decision, that sounds like the message that we would be standing behind. And again, you prefaced it with my opinion, it's not my opinion, I'm just observing what is written.
You had said earlier that it would become, I thought you said it, but never mind. Okay.
By the definition of protected class, it doesn't
I gotta find it, hang on, sorry.
Do you want to hear?
No, I got it. You give me the,
Does it designate protected class of ACC? Yeah, that's why we need to fix our ACC.
where is that?
like the board,
Some form,
we should, we
when
should
it's in the
understand
policy, produce on the new form.
It's, so that's just a complaint form,
So
so
the
that's
board can
separate.
agree with protected class.
No, I just don't know where it is in the policy. I'm just asking, where did you read that? Don't remember that.
I think Michelle's, but I'm not gonna speak for Michelle.
Did you say, did I miss it?
ACC?
Yeah, where it says for.
What I'm hearing Michelle say is that as a board, are we sending the message that with the creation of a racial harassment policy, that we are including non-protected classes? How are you saying?
I'm questioning if as a board, we understand the legal definition of protected class.
I appreciate that, and what I was questioning is, does it say protected class in our policy? If you just give me a second and tell me, I'll find what my only reading to see if protected class was in there. Or if we as a board need to have that discussion and make that clear.
I wanna point out that both of these complaints, as they were submitted, do not designate, the category of the complaint as racial harassment, which would lead us to go back to KLAR, which states that you can't file a complaint on behalf of someone else, and both of these complaints are not being filed on behalf of themselves and their student. Are not, no, they're like, I observed these things happening on the internet. So they're not saying, this happened to me, or this happened to my child. So even without, and again, we're gonna dig into ACC, we've established that. And I appreciate these complaints for raising another point for us to consider. But in my individual opinion, and I can't act as a body of one, obviously, that these two complaints, they shouldn't be considered as having merit, because they aren't filed on behalf of oneself or their student. And that isn't to take away from the bigger conversation that we need to have about ACC, it's to say, we cannot put into their hands that this was intended to be filed as a racial harassment complaint. This is now my opinion, and I don't know. And as an individual community member, I don't believe that racial harassment is something that is applicable or was designed around that. If there aren't any more questions, it'd be great to add this to the agenda and make some decisions in our public meeting. In the meantime, I'm looking to see if there's any more questions or comments. Judy?
Are we gonna add all 3 or 4 to the agenda, or just these 2?
I think it's 3. The 2 that are designated racial harassment, we can't do anything with them until they're investigated. The third one
Is what?
We can renew the motions that we made that did not pass because of a lack of.
And we have to vote to renew the motion.
We don't have to vote, I'll look to make sure, but my understanding is we can renew the motion simply because we have new information. Oh, and
And the new information someone requested here.
that they would give us an extension.
But I would still like to know about someone that's on leave. I mean, can we really have a hearing when someone is not there?
Well, yeah,
You could vote to do that. Okay.
okay, Alicia says we can, it's fine.
I don't think there's anything that says you can, it's just, would you want to?
Okay. With that, the work session is now closed at 6:38. Regular board meeting is at 7 p.m. and we'll be back in here.